Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to do what I consider to be one of my most important teachings today. I think I have, after years and years of study, figured something out. And this is, I'm not going to say it, thus saith the Lord, but I really think this is what's going on. This has been a very pivotal week, and we are at a very serious crossroads in our nation. You'd have to be living under a rock to understand that the United States of America is under grave attack from terrorists within and without. Now, let me just, because I have a lot of information and I'm going to try to be linear and very biblical and give a lot of scriptural proofs. But one thing I want to say is that Adonai Sabaoth, which is one of the names of Yahweh Elohim, which means he is the Lord of the armies. He is at the head of the armies, which talks about not only his armies, of Israel, but the angelic armies. But one of the things about a good general who wins, right? And we know that we win in the end, so to speak. What would make Yahweh's strategy such a winning strategy? And because the Father really did decentralize the birthrights. Now there's three parts to the birthright, okay? You should, if you've been following my teaching, this is sort of has to do with a little in the two houses of Israel. But you have the priesthood, okay? Did I spell that right? You have the priesthood. No, you got an R. Okay. You have this, which would recur to the Levites, right? You have a group within Israel, okay, that are called out and designated to officiate. These are the people that mediate and officiate for the people and for the nations before Yahweh Elohim. Then you have the scepter. I guess you could use a lot of words, but I'm going to use the scepter. The scepter comes from the root of a word called the Bekorah. Okay, let me put that over here. And I want you to see. I encourage everybody, you've got to get to the Hebrew, you've got to get to the specific letters, and you've got to see the grouping of the three-letter root words in order to get the absolute context. Our prophets were not confused. I've said this 100 times. We're the ones that are so confused today, we don't even know who we are. And the reason I'm doing this is because, and it's become more apparent and being said a lot throughout the world, that if America goes down, the lights go out. Why would people say such a thing? Why are we such a big deal, right? I mean, other than being, we have a history of being an economic powerhouse. We have come to the rescue and aid of many nations, but what is intrinsically in that phrase? Why would that be a truth if it is a truth? So we have the scepter, and we know that Judah was given the scepter. Okay, it is the spiritual authority, and it is in the root word Bekorah, B-E-K-O. Forget the vowel. Well, the vowels are important, but it's a bet because that versus what is known as the blessing. This is all in the writings. This is what the Father, starting with Abraham and the whole story through Isaac, and then through Jacob. And then when Jacob conferred these blessings onto the sons, this particular, which is the word berah in the root, okay? Very important. There is a world of difference between bekah and berah, and they both have the last letters. So it's berakah and bekarah, okay? This represents, and this was given to Ephraim, okay? This is all in the writings. It's all there. These are some of the deeper mysteries that are hidden, but they're quite hidden in plain sight. Now, these are all different aspects. We know that this given to the high priest, which was the culmination. The high priest, the scepter given to Judah, which represents the spiritual authority. The spiritual authority. Ephraim was giving what is known as the blessing, which is a a blessing of material wealth and prosperity, health and abundance. Now, every single child of Elohim is allowed to operate and to receive the blessings of all of these. But from a strategic, from a tactical point of view, the Father actually did separate out these 3 birthrights and spread them among the 12 tribes, which basically did get scattered throughout the whole earth. And all the promises, and I'll just give you some scriptures, that the whole culmination of the last days, the end time, is that he will bring all of these birthright. And let me tell you, the birthright, this is the birthright of the firstborn. These people, this is what it means to be a firstborn. And if you are a firstborn, which we are, we have rights, but we have responsibilities. And this ties into why, if the lights go out in America, the world plunges into deep, deep darkness. Now, Jeremiah 14, we'll start there. It says, yet behold. Now you got it. Like, I hope you'll hear the language, and I'm not going to go through the whole 2 houses, but I hope this is one of the greatest revelations that Ephraim, aka Christianity, can begin to teach its people. You need to pray. If you're a prayer warrior, you need to pray that this revelation penetrates into the mind and the heart and the teaching ministries within the house of Ephraim, because they don't know this. They think they've replaced Judah, then replaced, and that they are now the only actors on the stage, per se. Jeremiah 14 says, yet behold, the days are coming, declares Adonai, when they will no longer say, as surely as the Lord lives, who brought the Israelites up out of the land of Egypt. Instead, they will say, as surely as the Lord Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh lives. It's important to understand that we're talking about the name, the totality of the name of Elohim, who brought the Israelites up out of the land of the north and all the other lands to which he had banished them. For I will return them to their land that I gave to their forefathers. Now, there's something I have to really stress here. Because I teach on parts, there are many hints in this. This is no verse in the Torah really should be taken at just total face value. Like I said, a good tactician will hide a lot of strategic information inside of their messages, their code words. They even have ciphers, how they communicate with each other. That, if that's a reality in the earthly plane, trust me, that is something the Father thought of way before anyone else did. All right. So you have to understand, when it uses the word the land, we always think of the physical pshat land. And there always is a level of the land. But the land is talking about, in one sense, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. We are never talking just about a geographical little place in Israel the size of Rhode Island. All right, that there is a city. The one thing that you can determine, yes, there is a city called Jerusalem in the center of the earth that is the city of the great God. But in terms of his land, in terms of his kingdom, it is spread out over the whole earth. He owns the whole earth. So no one's land is quote unquote theirs. No country owns their quote unquote land. It has been leased to them. It has been given to them by the gracious goodness of Yahweh Elohim. And actually the Father actually did give specific portions. You read it in the book of Joshua, which is the best place to get the history of our people, the book of the upright, and you will see that when he divided the land between Shem, Ham, and Japheth, he did just that. He gave them geographic portions and told their offspring to go and fill up the whole earth. Now, of course, nothing has ever been done perfectly according to the Father's wishes. But it's important to understand, the land does not just refer to that little plot of land, because, and I've said, just critically think, you will never get all of the people that are firstborns in the earth, these people, in that little tiny plot of land. Even if you spread it out to the territories, the given to, to Euphrates and up north, there's not enough land. All right, the earth, we will inherit the whole earth again. Very important. All right, So I will return them to the land that I gave to their forefathers. This is what was given to Adam. Adam was made the firstborn, the rule over the whole earth, okay? Which is a place of physicality. There are many other dimensions in the Father's house. I won't even go into that. There's the heavens, plural, there's underworld. But in terms of on a Peshat level of the land, we are talking about the physicality of the whole planet. It belongs to Elohim, and he's coming back for it. Now, Jeremiah 23:4, it says, I will raise up shepherds over them who will tend them, and they will no longer be afraid or dismayed, nor will any go missing, declares Adonai. Behold, the days are coming. Again, when you hear these phrases, the days, that is referring to the last days. It is parsed out, the Adamic salvation history, into 6 days, which equates to a day is 1,000 years. So since Yeshua HaMashiach, when we actually did start counting, the last 2 days established. All right, so he says, behold, the days are coming, declares Adonai, when I will raise up for David a righteous branch, and he will reign wisely as king, and will administer justice and righteousness in the land. We're not talking about just the land of Israel. We're talking about the whole earth. This is the whole point. The Melech, the king, rules over the whole earth. And he will reign wisely as king and administer justice and righteousness. In his days, Judah, those who hold the scepter, Judah, who is also referred to as the remnant in all the earth, all right, will be saved. And Israel, that is this, Ephraim is Israel. Israel will dwell safely. I lost my place. Will dwell safely. And this is his name by which he will be called the Lord our righteousness. Now, you have to see those two things. First of all, he's talking to Judah, those who hold the scepter, and he is talking to Israel. One thing, you've got to start reading your Bible with your eyes wide open and understand when you see that language, we're talking the two houses. Judah and Israel, totally separate, and from a tactician point of view, totally doing different things in the earth for the whole Adamic history and making a way for the king to come. But what I'm trying to stress here is the last days that this will happen, but Judah will be saved. But this is and Israel will dwell securely. Well, that's a huge little nuance there. But I'll tell you one thing today. We know that the remnant of Judah that is in the land does need to be saved from her enemies. All right. And Israel, as you will see, we have been given, and this is the key verse, the theme verse for today. And let me give it to you, which is let me just find it. 2 Samuel 7:10. And I'm going to again show you. There is two very key Hebraic words there. They're different, and their nuanced meaning couldn't be clearer and couldn't have a greater misunderstanding today, which we're going to clear up. So anyways, in verse, like I said, mark that down, 2 Samuel 7:10. But let's go back to one more here. And it says in Isaiah 43:11, it says, on that day, the Adonai, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, will extend his hand a second time to recover the remnant of his people from Assyria, Egypt, Pathros, Cush, Elam, Shinar, Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. He will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. The exiles of Israel. It doesn't say, all right, we're talking about, again, the Ephraimites scattered, the 10 tribes scattered across the whole earth. He will collect the scattered of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Again, you have to understand, strategically, he is doing a work with Israel, and he's doing a work with Judah, okay? When Israel came back, they really should be the tribe of Judah, but they called themselves Israel. They had about 15 different names that they were thinking of, but they chose Israel because Israel is a word in its totality, all Israel, which does represent all of the multiplied tribe, the 12 tribes. But as you'll notice, these prophets didn't use the word all Israel. And I will tell you, and from an exegesis point of view, when a verse has the word word Jacob paired with the word Israel, then you know the prophet is speaking about all 12 tribes, because Jacob had 12 sons. But when the prophet parshes it out and he says that he collected the scattered from Judah and the exiles from Israel, he knows exactly what he's talking about. All right. Now, to establish that, but the point I want to say here, because one of the biggest mysteries is what's up with America? How come we are the greatest nation at the end of the age and we're not even in the Bible? Okay, well, we are all over the Bible, but unfortunately, people, your enemy has totally stolen your identity from you. And this is paramount to getting it back. And this is why the rally has to be today to the law and to the prophets. We need to understand again. Otherwise, we don't have any teeth, authority. If we can't operate in our firstborn mantles, we don't have any teeth in which to take on this beast AI empire that is all over us today. All right. Now, let me just switch. Well, let's leave that up there, but let me go to a whole different. Let's just talk about America, because see, this is totally known by the elitists, but they'll never teach this in schools, even though literally, because I have books, I've read it. You can Yale University in their libraries, books, and I think his name is Thule. I should have looked it up. I did. Where this is totally known, people. 100 years ago, this was known. But really and truly, ever since the government and the deep state, whoever was, brought back all those Nazi scientists from Germany here, I mean, our whole history, everything has been so rewritten. The way we view science, the way we view history, everything. All right, but now I want to take another tact here. This nation, it's very interesting because the Bible and so always follow archetype. That is one of the ways in which you can always stay on the straight and narrow. If you can get the archetype, you can and you can apply it. You can pretty much know that you're in the correct zone for correct biblical exegesis. But let's just say this, because I don't want to, this is one of these no-brainers. The wheat and the tares are planted together. That's one of the major parables Yeshua says. And you have you have wheat and you have tares. One is a weed and one is a very bread-giving, life-giving plant. Another one is a worthless weed, okay? Very specifically chosen so that the mind picture is not lost on anybody, okay? So the wheat and the tares are planted together. This is the story like with the mixed multitude when they left Egypt. The wheat and the tares mixed together, and unfortunately Israel was not sharp enough on their game. They led all these people into the congregation, and they're so surprised why they can't follow, Moshe and Aaron's instructions for Adonai. This is a problem. We have to identify the mixed multitudes, and I'm telling you what, it has nothing to do. You will never figure it out by race or gender or color or economic status. You will only figure it out by the fruit. And those are right from the words of our master Yeshua, who said you will know them by their fruit. And fruit is a code word for soul, and for out of the heart are the issues of life. Where is your soul? It's in your heart, and by the actions that come out of your heart, you can tell people. You can tell what their root source is. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because just in the founding of this country, and this was brought to the attention to me by a good friend who has been, following my YouTube channel, and sometimes we get into some great discussions, and she pointed it out to me. This nation was founded in two different parts, but by two totally different groups of people, wheat and tares. In Jamestown, a group came first. Okay, that's what I mean by archetype. All right, now let me tell you a little secret. The armies of Hasatan know the future, quite a bit into the future. They live in a higher dimension. They see more down the linear road of time, okay? So they know. That's why the enemy plots against us and tries to, even in our own lives. I know this from my own life, all right? So it's no surprise that this archetype fits. And then you have Plymouth. Now, I'm not going to go into, too much. We're going to stick with big picture archetypes here. But Jamestown was founded in 1607 first, and Plymouth came along later, December in 1620. By their fruit. If you ever study out the history of Jamestown is pretty gnarly, truly. It's pretty chaos. It's full of a lot of, really bloodshed. Their relationship with the Indians was not good much. It was a colony that was established, and really, I think within 89 years, it disappeared. It just disappeared. It just was totally non-functional and collapsed. All right. Plymouth, on the other hand, founded second in 1620. This group of little people, this group of a small number of people went on to form the bedrock foundation, really, of this nation in its highest calling of the righteous, because their king was the king of righteousness. These people, you check it out, total mercenaries. These people looking for religious freedom and a place to worship Yahweh Elohim, knowing that the scriptures tell us that there is another place for the people, which is where I'm going to go. So now Jamestown, the thing is, the first slave ship in America landed in Jamestown in August 1619. You know their fruit is bad. Slave ship. I mean, come on, people. I don't have to explain all this stuff to you, all right? But in 1619, and yes, they were, quote unquote, at first indentured servants, which was a very common practice back then. Hey, it's like just working for the man. Well, many people a lot of us are indentured servants today, so to speak, working for the man, all right? But within 50 years, it had produced what was known as institutionalized slavery. All right, we all know that history. Bad fruit, okay? Mixed multitude. People who just really and truly are not covenant keepers, are not Torah keepers, okay? Now, Plymouth, on the other hand, was a colony that was totally self-sufficient, and it is the foundation, and we're still here today. These people, and I'll tell you a little secret, this is personal to me, and while cancel culture is not going to write away my history, these are my people. I have, I just, by the grace of Elohim, books and letters and a history of trade. These people were unbelievably righteous, okay? Not perfect. Yes, mixed multitude is in their mix, but righteous to an unbelievable degree, okay? But within 5 years, they became self-sufficient, and the rest is history. And their archetype went on and populated the towns in New England, which spread out, into all the earth, and now we're coast to coast, okay? But let me just say another thing about this. They wrote the Mayflower Compact, which again became the basis of civil, ethical, covenanted behavior between the people who wanted to band together and consider themselves a nation. It's not an accident. It was all Torah based. Even those on the Mayflower that were not, quote, Jesus freaks, whatever you want to call it, they signed on. They understood. They weren't argumentative to the fact that any culture that founds itself and organizes itself around the commandments is going to have a heck of a better chance of being blessed and prosper. All right. So that's why they went along with it. Nobody coerced anybody. It was just, to them, it wasn't rocket science. All right. Now, these two settlements, the archetype finds out when, oh gosh, now I get so, who had, Rebecca had two sons in her womb, Esau and Jacob. Who came out first? Esau. Usually you get the manifestation of the wicked one first, because the enemy always goes ahead to try to muddy the waters. And he literally, pulled on the heel of Jacob. He was going to get out first, come hell or high water, all right, to receive the firstborn. Because technically there is the concept, the firstborn means firstborn. Technically, if you study it out, though, most of the firstborns are not technically the firstborns, because the Father looks on the heart. And he gives this responsibility to those whom he can trust. I mean, seriously, what earthly father, if he has a fortune, gives it to the son who he knows is just going to blow it in a year? Okay, no, he gives it to the one who has character, is mature, is stable, all right. And so the archetypes fit, but it's important to understand this. These founding, and why? See, because these people know it's in the writings. They knew they had come to a city on a hill. They knew they had come to a new land. All right. These people that came in here, they were 10 tribes, and it is known. All right. They knew it, and the others knew it. Unfortunately, we don't know it. Now, let me just give you a couple of proofs. Because it is in the archives. This is why our early it gets me so mad. Our early colleges, Princeton, Harvard, yeah, they were all Christos-centered, Christos, high intellectual, wisdom and understanding about these same principles and Torah roots. All right, there are writings buried in the basements of these libraries. I can say it really pisses me off, the way it's just so nothing new. You rewrite a people's history and then they wonder why they're clueless. That's why 90% of the world does not really know their people groups. And at this point, it doesn't really matter, but it just how the enemy is able to just come in and separate us and rewrite our history. But the Jewish Mishnah, which is a Torah commentary, when referring to Deuteronomy 29:28, okay? All right, let me just read this. It says the majority opinion among the sages is that the 10 lost tribes of Israel will be preserved in a quote-unquote another place. Eretz Achet are also understood as a new world. That's what it means. Eretz Acheret, by implication, means another land in a new world revealed at a latter time. Now, where would they get that concept, okay? Well, because these people knew their Torah. But let's go back now to my theme verse, which is going to be 2 Samuel 7:10. Okay, and let's get the context, because context is king in Bible exegesis. Now, in here, there's a verse, and it says, let's see if I can read it pretty verbatim. Let me see where I have it. Okay, it says that now, let me give you the context. Okay, so this is King David. He has just subdued all of the nations around him, his enemies. He is at peace with his enemies. He has extended the borders of Israel. All 12 tribes are together, one nation, under Yahweh Elohim. David is their king, okay? But yet he's lamenting, and he wants now to build a permanent, and it's very odd, why wouldn't he? Permanent place for their most important artifacts, the Ark of the Covenant, and they have everything from the tabernacle, the tent, into a standing sanctuary. And he's praying about it. He's starting to plan for it. And so Nathan, at first, the prophet, who is in the line of Zadok, who is a high priest, who is a counselor to David, says, hey, great, go do whatever your heart desires. But obviously, that wasn't the whole plan of Yahweh. So Nathan gets he gets this a vision, or a talking to, I guess you could say, from Adonai that says, no, tell David not to do that. He is not the one who's going to build my temple, because basically his purpose was he had blood on his hands. Basically, it's going to be his son Solomon. But he said, so Nathan had to go back to the king and say, wait, no, you are not to build the temple, okay? And what he says is, I will provide a place and will plant them there, that they may dwell in a place of their own and be not disturbed no more, and will be moved no more. Okay, now there's, and this verse comes out of nowhere. And then if you really see, this is where the Father hides things in plain sight, because it's well, wait a minute, David just, first of all, why would he provide a place? See, they have a place. They're in They're in Israel. They're in that geographic land. The land has been subdued. They're become prosperous and a powerhouse economy in the whole world. And the whole world knows of what David just did. The whole world is quite aware of what's going on in this little geographic plot of land. But then Nathan goes on and says, I will provide a place and will plant them that they may dwell in a place of their own. Well, weren't they already dwelling in a place of their own? So it's very weird language. And be disturbed no more. Well, weren't they already at a point of not being disturbed? This is a future prophecy. This is where, the Father is embedding tactical information for future generations, okay? But if you look at these key words, and again, it's all about key words, the first word, 7760, which in the verse, it talks about, and I will provide a place, okay? When you look at that, provide a place, which means, and the implication is that he will set, he will establish, he will put his people in a place. Well, didn't he just put them in a place? Okay, so, okay, but he's going to put them in a place. But then it doesn't end there. And it's because it's not like past tense. This is sort of enigmatic future tense. And he says, and will plant them that they may dwell in a place of their own. Well, weren't they already dwelling in a place of their own? Okay? And be disturbed no more. And be moved no more. Well, the whole language, if you look at it in context, it makes no sense. But it does make sense. Hindsight, you always understand scripture better in hindsight. So the two key takeaway words here I want you to see is that as the Father told Nathan to tell David that he would provide another place to accommodate, this is the key word, the multiplied seed. Now, one of the most important things to understand, this blessing, we always think of church, this is a blessing of a couple of things, but one thing, it is a blessing of multiplication of seed. Remember, the promise to Abraham was, I will make your seed as the stars of the sky and the sands on the sea. That's a lot of seed. You will never get that amount of seed. When the resurrection happens and everyone comes, that seed will never fit into the little land of Israel over there. Never. And I don't know why the Jews are so blind to it. Well, I do understand it, but that is a great area of blindness. They are not the multiplied seed. They do not have this part of the birthright on them. All right. But it says that he will accommodate the multiplied seed. All right. He would transfer the birthright blessing to the offspring in another place. Now it is in the letters. And let me see where I have, okay. So the first one, appoint a place, which is 7760, which means to put to place, to appoint, okay. The second usage of this is 8478. Okay, these are all Strong's numbers. You can look at them. That's the point. Check my research. Don't take my word for it. But it has a whole different connotation. We still have the word place in there, but the word is an implication instead of, in place of. So this is where the mystery starts to really come alive. So because who knows the future? Who knows the future, people? Yahweh Elohim. Doesn't he say from beginning to end he will watch over his people? Do you think he did not know that, first of all, he was going to totally disband and divorce and push off the physical land where David was right then and there with all the people to the nations? That's all prophesied, and that actually happened. Actually, I want to make a point because I want to come back to it. I ascribe to what I call the if doctrine. If. See, if the lights go out in America, the whole world is engrossed in deep darkness. It's still to be determined. But anyways, my point is the word is used absolutely. It has three meanings, but in this context, it's very easy to figure out. It's used 34 times as meaning instead of, or a replacement, or in place of. And it's used, you can see it, it's used in Genesis 4:25. It's used specifically when, after Cain killed Abel, and 120 years later, what does she have? She has another son, Seth, who is given to her in place of, instead of, for the righteous seed of Abel. Clear as a bell, okay? establish that. The second witness is in verse, let me see if I got this, I know I do. Genesis 22:23. So you can look at Genesis 4:25 for this word, for its proof text. Genesis 4:25, okay? And then now we're into Genesis 22:13. Okay, this is, and this, you can't make this stuff up. That's why I said get into the letters in the Hebrew. 22:13, this is where Abraham, when he's just about to sacrifice Isaac, what happens? Out of the thicket comes a ram, who is, we're talking, is to replace, to become the sacrifice instead of Isaac. Totally clear. All right? So it has that meaning is built into that word in the context of these verses. So we've established that there will be another place, people. So now as you begin to hear the verses that I started out with where the Father prophesied to Nathan that he would provide another place for the multiplied seed. He would transfer the birthright blessing to the offspring in another place. Now, foreign peoples, all right, so okay, and then I wanted, why is it, and it's America. This is the point, people. This land we have, the land that we love, is the other place that the Father reserved for the seed, the multiplied seed in the last days. Come on, there is no other nation on the earth where this scenario has played out to the T, whereas surely as the Lord lives, who brought the Israelites up of the land of the north and all the other lands which he had banished them. Look at, we're the 10 tribes. We're not going back to Israel. I mean, where are we going to fit? Okay, there's just so many factors here. I can't even say, because Judah has a different birthright. They have the king comes through them. Paul says they are the scribal house. They have kept the Torah. They have so many mantles on them that come from this concept of the scepter. Okay, nobody's taken that away. It's absolutely, but that is not for a 10 tribe or for us. That is not our predominant birthright we function under. We function under the blessing, this concept where we are the salt of the earth, where we are the light of the world, where we have been scattered into all the nations. So as we come into a relationship with Yahweh, he can elevate all peoples. You know, it's like, you know, the waters rise. You want to elevate everyone. And that is what the seed of Ephraim has done in the world when they have been well behaved, which history always tells stories like, you know, of good behavior and bad behavior. It's the if doctrine, okay? If my people. Now, and this is the whole point, because in 2 Kings 17:2, it's very clear. It says, Yahweh was angry with Israel, okay, and removed them from his presence. Okay, and it says right there, it says only the tribe of Judah was left in the land. I mean, how much clearer do you want it? There's it. He was angry with Israel. He literally divorced us, scattered us, sent us to the nations and this is the whole story of Joseph. We became Gentiles, we acted, we drank, we worshiped, we did everything. Most of us forgot Torah. This is our ancestral, but there was always a group, there has always been a remnant in both houses who have kept the light of Torah in action, in word, and spiritual understanding. But there again, 2 Kings 17:2, Yahweh was angry with Israel and removed them from his presence, from the land, and only the tribe of Judah was left. In 2 Kings 17:13 it says, yet through all his prophets and seers, Yahweh warned Israel and Judah. Again, the if doctrine. He warned both of them, if saying, turn from your wicked ways and keep my commandments and my statutes according to the entire, all of the commandments. He's very clear. Turn from your wicked ways. And Israel, Judah did not. Judah became very apostate, and they were sent to Babylon for 70 years, but they came back. Judah has managed to keep a much more, they're the older brother in the parable. They have kept a much more relationship of obedience to the Father. And that is why they are still a visible remnant. They know who they are. They've gone back to their geographic land, which really houses the city. It's all about the city of God, Zion. It's all about the mount, the Temple Mount. That is going to be the center of the government of God in the whole earth when the Melech, the king, comes back to rule and reign. Okay? But this place called Another Land, brilliant strategy. So Jeremiah says, in Jeremiah 7:3, he says, thus says Adonai, Sabaoth, the Lord of the armies, correct your ways and deeds, and I will let you live in this place. Okay? Everything was conditional. If, all right? And if we don't come back to our senses and combine these birthrights that are here planted in this land at the end of the age and rise up in our full birthright authority before the Father, keeping his covenant. That's our sword, that's the teeth, that is how we're going to defeat. There's no other way. There's nowhere about the formula that's going to work. How we're going to defeat these beasts, oh my gosh, these that are in our nation. And I mean, it's, you can get yourself pretty scourged looking at the landscape and saying, how is anyone make war with this beast? Okay, well, the Father knows. So if you will correct your ways and your deeds, I will let you live in this place. And he's saying this to Judah, and he says, look, if you don't believe me, just look at Shiloh, which was the northern capital, which is, they had, Israel wasn't stupid. They saw what happened to the 10 tribes. There's so many. I have 2 really great videos on all of this. Ephraim, the birthright and the blessings. I have actually 2 whole playlists on this. It's fascinating, it's thoroughly deep, it's absolutely biblically accurate, and is the only lens which you need to have with sight to see spiritually what's going on. Okay, so we've established all that. But let me go and try from another tact here, which I was going to say again, to refer back to the Mishnah says, the majority opinion. Now you understand that there are many sages through many centuries who have weighed in on this weighty stuff, all right? And, Judah, being the good scribal house, has kept all the opinions in the house, all right? But the majority opinion is that the 10 tribes of Israel will be preserved in another place, which is understood in a new world, in a new land, at a latter age. You tell me what other place on the planet that could be. Okay, that is us. Now, from the Dead Sea Scrolls, this is a good one. This is from a midrash on the last days. If you want to check it, it's 4, that's how they code these, 4Q174. I'm reading it from, I think it's a Gezabam's great book on the Dead Sea Scrolls. And this collection of text was assembled from a 2 Samuel midrash, combining with other scriptural passages. It serves to present, this says a sectarian doctrine identifying the community with the temple and to announce the coming of the 2 messiahs, the branch of David and the interpreter of the law. Okay, now, I shouldn't have read that commentary, but the point is, let me read the text here. I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them that they may dwell there and may be troubled no more by their enemies. No son of iniquity shall afflict them again as formerly from the day that I set judges over my people Israel. See, historically, what has to be understood, this is one of the greatest blessings of America. We're one of the few nations, we have never really had a full-fledged attack on our soil, on our land, on our coast. We have had incredible peace and prosperity. And I did want to make another point, which I will get to. Okay, but let me just finish this. And the commentary says, this is the house which he will build for them in the last days, as it is written in the book of Moshe. In the sanctuary which thy hands have established, O Adonai shall reign forever and ever. And this is a quick, but their interpretation is that this is concerning the words to David, I will give you rest from all your enemies. This means he will give them rest from all the children of Hasatan who caused them to stumble, so that they will not be destroyed from their errors, just as they came with a devilish plan to cause the sons of light to stumble and to devise against them a wicked plot, that they might become subject to Hasatan and their strength. If you understand the history of with Jeroboam, who was the king, ended up becoming the king, so to speak, of the northern kingdom when it got split, how he totally, within really one generation, apostatized the whole nation. And he really did make allegiances with Hasatan, and he caused all the children of the house of the northern kingdom to stumble, and to the point where they were, kicked off the land, scattered to the nations, which in the brilliancy of Yahweh understanding, seeing down the road, he always watched over them. He always, and wherever they went, those lands, if they treated the children of Elohim knowingly or unknowingly, correctly, all the people groups would rise in prosperity, in health, in righteousness. And we can see this in the history. If you look back through these lenses, it's very clear. So this is not like a hidden understanding, okay? And there's another quote from, which I guess I don't have right in front of me, from the Kolbrin Bible, which is another fascinating text that's been released by the elites, which talks about, it's sort of the chronicles of a lot of, and I believe a lot of the Levitical Levites who went with the northern tribes, because understand the Levites were in every single city and town in Israel. They were spread out all over. Many of the Israelites went down and stayed with Judah, but many of them went with the people as they were dispersed. And, I'm sure initially tried to, keep the people rooted and grounded in Torah, keep them, it was always a fight, but eventually the whole concept was swallowed up in pagan apostasy. But in the Kolbrin Bible, it does talk about them. It says specifically, I don't have that basically these people, as they journeyed and surged, they knew that they were banished. They knew, though, that out there was another place. You understand, history is linear. History, you just gotta, in history, because it's attached to time, you can't do anything about it. Time is really our biggest enemy. The one thing we're never going to be able to change is time, okay? If you've been given 75 years to live, there's nothing you can do to make 10-year-old to turn into 75. It's got to play itself out. The history of all this had to play itself out. And there are mathematical formulas within that, to the day, and I believe this, to the day when America was the 1776 and established in that sense, was 7 times 7. I think if I have this corrected, I didn't review these parts of the notes, but basically almost to the day. Why wouldn't it be to the day? Because on Yahweh's, things happen very auspicious times. But this is something now that is absolutely paramount, because if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and repent and turn from their wicked ways, even though we have this foundation, we have lost it. In one generation, again, look what they've done to us since World War II, how they have, it's unrecognizable now, this nation. One nation under God. It's really, and it's happening now at lightning speed. It's just mind-boggling. And believe me, it has nothing to do, whatever they want to tell you, with pitting one people group against another. Because this nation prophesied as Joseph's coat. Joseph is the key archetypal leader. The shepherds, he will raise up shepherds for his people Israel, is the archetypal thing that he was a foreign ruler in a foreign land, a foreign leader in a foreign land. And the point is, we're told Joseph has the archetypal coat of 12 stripes, 12 colors out of every nation, tribe, tongue, and people. We cannot lose sight of that. No matter how much the enemy tries to divide us, you have to understand the people of Elohim. It has nothing to do. It is a heart issue, and you will know the people of Elohim by their fruit, by the actions of their heart. So, that's why you could tell with Jamestown. bad seed got in there and started, and they were the ones that were running the show, so to speak. And you know, they bought the slaves, I think, for food. They exchanged food for slaves. Who would do that? I mean, really, who would you sell? I mean, people for food. Okay, yes, it happens, but still, these people at Plymouth had just as hard a time getting established. You know, half of them died out the first winter, but they were able to make peace with their neighbors. They were able to make peace initially with the Indians who provided for them. You understand how these things operate. The conditions of people's heart, what motivates, really does play out in the history of their history. But why I'm so hepped on this right now, because we still have a birthright of blessing upon us. I don't think so. When this nation, when they came here, it was said, there's, you know, people couldn't understand, this was such a blessed land. There were many peoples who came to this land. There have been many indigenous tribes, indigenous people groups that have been on this land, and not just the Indians, okay? Many people going way back. There's histories of people groups found, 1,000, 2,000 years ago, but none of them took root and established a sovereign worldwide kingdom like Babylon, like Egypt, like Persia. Okay, these are the empires that arise, that have dominated the landscape. All right, little tribes in little geographic areas, that's not really the major movers and shakers of history. You get countries like Egypt, Babylon, like I said, Persia. All right, this land was reserved to be what it is, a city on a hill, a light for an Ephraimite. And this is the second point. People should know our history. During the backdrop of when most of the tribes were coming, okay, from all over, people, from, and believe me, the Father brought tribes through the slave trade here, brought them through Israel, the Irish slave trade here, brought them from brought them from China, has brought people from Korea, has brought people from every place on the planet to this nation. I'm sorry, Dr. Shiva, people listen to this guy, an untouchable, which from a caste system, it makes me cry, from India. Who can do that? He said, like 1 in a trillion, what are the chances? 1 in a trillion that one of the most oppressed people groups on the planet, all right, would come here and be part of this great collective. All right, but this land was so preserved in its riches. See, what makes a nation rich is a lot of its natural resources, right? Okay, Israel was a powerhouse. Israel is a powerhouse today in the land because they have reclaimed the land. They have built up the economies with the blessings of Elohim. This nation was just sitting here for the seed, the righteous seed line, okay, that he said he would bless them. He would give them another place. The whole story of America is about people coming here. This is the story of the immigrants, the legal immigrants of America. Come here. And I'm not denigrating. We have a huge problem today, people. I believe that I don't want to go down that road. This is a place that has been promised for people who want to live by the rules, work hard, believe, and make a future for their children in life, in liberty, and in freedom. Okay? Now, this nation was preserved so that this time we could be a powerhouse again. We could be a people group on the planet. And this gets to the point of why, if you're a firstborn, you have a responsibility. It's not just, see, this is one of the Ephraim's biggest problems. They have always thought that their blessings were for their own consumption. Number one, consume, 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 all right? And they have tolerated the wicked seed and worked right alongside them. That is a part of the history. It's undeniable, it's there, but it's not the whole story, okay? But if we can rise above our own evil inclinations, if we can truly understand that our birthright, especially at this pivotal time in history, this right is so that we can rise up, in our birthright. I have 2 last points, and be a blessing again to the nations, because the nations are going into deep darkness. That's what's prophesied. There will be a clash between the sons of God and, you know, the sons of light and the sons of darkness like the world has never seen. And you can't look out of the landscape and see it's happening right in front of us. But America was always in the Father's idea to be a place, another place, that there would be a people who could rise up in their authority with the firstborn and exercise their responsibilities. And that includes this. Now, one of the things that, one of the most unknown histories that they've really tried to hide from, again, this nation was founded not just by Ephraimite seed, totally, but by Jewish. The Judah was here too, but Judahs at this time were mostly called Marranos. This is what the persecution in Europe had become so intense that most of the Jews, a lot of Jews had to kind of go undercover, take on the mantle, just like Joseph did, of being like the peoples in their culture, which is like forced conversion. So they might look like a Christian on the outside, but many of them strove overwhelmingly to retain their Israelite identity in their homes. And that's why it got so bad. And literally they would, it's a very sad history. But what I want to say is there were as many Jews instrumental in forming this nation as there was the Ephraimite seed. Unfortunately, you won't, it's a much more hidden, it's even Christopher Columbus. I mean, I believe that that's really the truer story, that he as a Jew, because the day after he left, the Jews were expelled from Spain. Imagine a nation doing that. I mean, would we be in uproar today if all of a sudden in America we rose up and said, okay, we're going to kick out every Korean, well, let me find a larger visible people group, you know, we're just going to kick out all the Irish. We're just going to literally tell every single Irish person, you got to get out of here, and you got 3 days. I mean, that's literally what happened. They were kicked out of England, they were kicked out of Spain, they were hunted, persecuted. I mean, that's the sad history of Judah in Europe. It's not really a pretty one. They had times of great prosperity and intellectual, you know, where they really were visibly contributing and visibly accepted. But by and large, the history isn't pretty. But anyways, that group is here. And most people, a lot of people today, what's happening is they're realizing as they're coming back into this whole two-house understanding that they really do have Jewish bloodline in them. Okay? The two seeds, the two are so mixed together, it's really crazy. But that's a piece of the puzzle that you do have to understand. So, but this is the point. If we are going to be, and I've always believed this, I believe it now more strong than ever, that the only way we're going to get out of we're going to kick the Kabbalah out, the 3% that are running the show, that Amalek seed, and all those that align with them through greed or whatever, and let the righteous seed rule in righteousness, okay, is if we come together and understand this very tactical thing that the Father has done, all right? The priesthood, the scepter, and the blessing need to come together, and together that rises up. That's the tipping point, people. Nothing can stand against that threefold combo. Remember, threefold cord, not quickly broken? If we can do that with our eyes wide open, according to Torah, all right? And I'm not saying, I mean, I'm in a pretty simple place here. I mean, keep the 10 commandments. That's our covenant. Let's have this ethical standard and let's enforce it. Okay, we're a nation today just given over to people that just accept bribes. That's it. We are a totally nation run on bribery. Okay, if we can put our laws that are on the book into effect and raise our standard for us, and then it will be risen for the whole world. The whole world needs to get out from under the cabal of these wicked. I have a friend in Australia, just talking to her the other day. It's unbelievable, the lockdown there. It just makes what we're going through pale in comparison. Most of the world is under that, a much more stringent lockdown with no hope. No hope. This is why people look to America. If we go down, it goes into gross darkness, and it's not going to be pretty. But I don't believe that that is why the Father reserved this place, why he told the multiplied seed, why he brought us here. It is an absolute 100% out of every creed, color, ethnicity, and race and gender, everything. It's a people who love their God and are willing. So if my people who are called by my name, okay, we really got to humble ourselves. We've really got to ask the Father for help, but only in truth and righteousness. He cannot bless a lie. It's just not in his nature. It can't happen. but he can bless us when we have true righteousness and will uphold our covenant. So on that note, whatever, I believe the best for America. I pray for America. Pray that our eyes will become open to the true spiritualities, who we are and our responsibility, because the nations are waiting for the manifestation of the birthright sons of Elohim, and that our king, and under our king, the principalities and the powers. I mean, we're just going to be able to deal with the wicked people, okay? And our Melech, our king, and believe me, he is going to deal with the wicked, fallen principalities and powers. So on that note, shalom, have hope, and I will see you in the next video.